Okay, sure. Okay. I'm Kate Wintroble. It's nice to virtually meet. I see a lot of folks that have been on before, and I'm excited to see that you're seeing this series all the way through. Kate Wintroble, I'm with Huntington Bank in the Strip District, so I'm neighbors with Cancer Bridges, which is how Jen and I connected. I just want to pause and ask, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So today's topic is around protecting your identity and other assets. And we utilize, paused here, let's try this. There we go. We utilize the modules that are provided by the FDIC. So if you went on to the FDIC.gov's website, eventually, after digging pretty deep, you would be able to find these. So it's really brought to you by myself and Chuck Spacuzza is my partner, and he will join us at his earliest opportunity, but brought to you by Huntington Bank. But we utilize the content from the FDIC website. So I was just like to give that disclosure. All right, so today is all around protecting your assets. So we're going to start if you've been on these before, you know that this really is about, we start as basic as possible so we're all on the same page, and then it just builds off a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit about risks and what your assets really are and how they're defined, things like that. Right. All right, so difference between assets and risks. Assets is something that you have that has value. This is typically going to, in this conversation, mean value as far as financial value. But it can also be something, you think a password, right, into your online banking, that obviously has value because it leads to other assets. And then risk, which is any potential harm. So in this kind of course, we're going to talk about the different ways that you can protect yourself against those risks. We have to say that, of course, you cannot eliminate all risks. And even with some of the different, as a financial institution, I think finance industry in general has had to come up with new and innovative products and services, and even create, we've got a cybersecurity team here in the city of Pittsburgh. Meanwhile, our headquarters is actually in Columbus. And we do that as a financial institution because it's a necessity. It's costly necessity, but it's a necessity. And so I think that as we go through, there's so many different stories that I could tell you in regards to how fraudsters go about getting access to accounts. But this is about preventative measures that you can take, help you make more informed decisions. And I'll tell you a little bit about some things that you can look out for, regardless of where you bank, things that your bank may offer and or be supporting you, even though you might not realize it. So reducing your risks is really about being careful with the information that you give out. Know your rights, know your responsibilities, and about different insurances that are provided now that you might not even realize. In fact, we'll talk a little bit about your homeowner's insurance and some different coverages that actually you have access to in there. So again, the first section, this presentation, I normally announce this at the beginning, but this particular presentation is a 3-hour presentation, and then I go in and say, how can I simplify this for the time that we have to give it? And then I try to make it fun too, but we'll see how I do. This one is a little bit more difficult, I think, to make fun. Before I move on, I can't imagine that we have questions yet, but I do want to pause. Anything from the group, if you want to add something in the chat, I think that's how we typically do it. I don't see anything thus far, so I'm going to go ahead and keep going. So identity theft and fraud protection. And our goal of a takeaway is to help you really reduce risk by learning how to reduce risk. And then, of course, just understand the resources that are available to you. This is a reminder that your identity is an asset. So we talked earlier, right, when we think about assets, generally we're going to be thinking about the financial side, right? Anything that has value. But your identity is an asset because it's linked to all of those, the access to all of those financial items. So what is identity theft? It's a crime that happens when someone uses a person's identifying information without their authority. And there really wouldn't be a scenario, right, where you're telling somebody they could pretend to be you. So, anytime someone else is taking on your identity, that's what identity theft is. So what do we mean by that? Think of Facebook. When you are even listing your favorite food, your favorite vacation, your pet's name, you're posting you got a new car or whatever, a lot of times accidentally on Facebook or other social media sites, we're sharing information that might be a security question for ourselves. So it's all about that public versus private access. But documents that have information about you, about your identity and other information that thieves can steal or impersonate you, is really what this is trying to bring, trying to make you think about. Having your phone number public on any social media, you could turn that off. And I really encourage you to turn that off. It gives people the opportunity. I mean, even at the bank, one of the things that we have here to protect folks is called one-time passcode, OTP. And what we'll do if we're anytime it's a larger dollar amount is we will actually right in front of you send you a text to your cell phone, and then you give us a code, we type it in on our computer, and that's another form of protection. I mean, way back when, and not even that far, I mean, I shouldn't say that, 5 years ago you could go into a bank and know someone and get the thumbs up, and still when we really know someone, we're comfortable in clicking, that we know them. But now, if it's over a certain size, even if we know them, we really want to still see we've done these other measures to make sure that this person in front of us is who they say they are. And we're going to do these other things just to help identify that. So how could you be harmed? This list that I'm going to show you is growing. I think that's a really important note. But all of the ways that people steal identity or steal your information, I think about when I entered banking in 2008, I think there was phishing, skimming was one, and we're going to go over what these are. I mean, but there's several items on here now. So a lot of us know, right? When you get something in the mail, make sure you shred it or even burn it if you have an opportunity to do so. Rip it up, do what you can, black out account numbers if that's the only option. Your email accounts oftentimes have access to information, or some people even in the past have emailed themselves important passwords. Social media, that's such a big one right now. So ways criminals can steal your identity. So this is the formal language. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means. But phishing is basically phishing for ways that you would give personal information to me based on, certain questions. Maybe this person might be trying to make it seem conversational, like, oh, where did you grow up? Or what high school did you go? I went to Freeport. So they're just approaching a conversation with you and it sounds polite. And maybe it's over the phone having a conversation with you around your car warranty. And next thing you know, you're establishing likability and sharing personal information. This is somebody that is what they do. They are designed to create conversation, get information, and steal from you ultimately. The other one is vishing. Vishing is when you're doing that all through the phone. Phishing is through email. And then smishing is through text messages. So like I said, back in 2008, it was all called phishing. We didn't say vishing, smishing, and phishing. It was all just phishing. But now the type and the way that the fraudster goes about getting access to the information, we identify these different words. Spear phishing is when you're doing it in such a way you're targeting someone specific, either because you think and or know that they've got assets and you want to exploit that. Farming is fake websites this can get really dynamic. If you want more information when I ask for questions, I'm happy to share. Just put it in the chat. But, you know, this is when somebody they'll create a website in order to maybe, as an example, get leads for a cleaning company. And then you're filling out information, typing in, you know, where, you know, your cleaning company, and then they're going to provide you cleaning jobs. And it can get really dynamic. So again, if you want more info, I can share some local stories of farming. Skimming, it's a lot of times it's a device. This is really important. So if you zoned out for a second, zone back in. Skimming devices are found. We check our ATM every single day, twice a day, for a skimming device. It's a small device. You could feel it on the outside of an ATM. These are typically most commonly found on gas stations, particularly not 24-hour gas stations, but ones that close. So you put your card in, and there's a device on there that's built to read your digits, but also the PIN that you're putting in or whatnot. ATMs, you ever go somewhere where it's like a random ATM, not necessarily associated with a bank? So here I am at Huntington, right at 1800 Smallman. My ATM, we actually service it, so we can walk out there and take care of it every day. But I've certainly been to carnivals and fairs where there's just that random ATM near the Porta Johns. They're not getting the same access, and people that have these devices, they're targeting locations like that. And so just to keep yourself safe, all you really need to do is touch the outside. If you don't feel any type of weird thing, you're good to go. I have personally found skimming devices and alerted the attendant. If you're familiar with the Forest Hills area, there's a little gas station over by Roman Bistro. And they, you know, we just take it off, and that's it. And so I actually, on my notes, I put in here, a lot of people will say, it's Pittsburgh, it's a small town, this kind of thing just doesn't happen. Yins, guys, yes, it does. It does happen, unfortunately. There's scammers everywhere. And so people are oftentimes looking at how to make money easily. And then, of course, just social media scamming. Go back one. So warning signs. Obviously, some of these might seem really obvious, but withdrawals that you didn't make, missing bills or statements, merchants refusing your checks. It shouldn't be writing out a lot of checks unless you really have to. Remember that every time you give a check out, you're giving somebody your routing number and your account number, as well as what check number you're on. And so way back when, that was the way you sent money, but we truly encourage people to avoid check writing nowadays. Credit card transactions not going through. If you're thinking, that's kind of weird, I paid my bill on time, right? Or I should have way more money. I have access to 10,000. I don't use this card that much. And I thought it was interesting because when I review these decks before I present with you guys, I try to make some notes and think about where can I add some personal, anecdotes. And I thought, oh, of course, those all seem very, relevant. And then I hit the next page. And so basically, there's actually 3 pages that we're going to go over of warning signs. And of course, it's going to be tough to remember all of them, but that just stood out to me because if you've been on our slides, I mean, we're usually covering everything in one slide. But warning signs when it comes to identity theft keeps growing because the people that are conducting this fraud are getting increasingly creative on how they're going about stealing. So other things, right? Letters about accounts that you didn't open or you don't recognize. Emails about purchases that you don't think you made. Statements for credit cards that you don't have, know you don't have, think you don't have, aren't sure. Debt collectors calling about debts that aren't yours, passwords or usernames not working. That's a big one. You go if you travel at all, I was just in Ocean City. The first thing I needed to do was go put my Disney Plus account into the TV so that in the morning when I make breakfast, my kids aren't going crazy. They're just watching Moana. So when you put that username and password, it's in there. And so it's just a starting place for a scammer to, take off or start to run with things. So you want to make sure that when you're doing anything like that, all of those digital devices, all of that username and password, you can sign out from your phone. So maybe you left Ocean City, forgot to do it. You can sign out into any device, and you can also see what other device is being used and where it's being used. So if you've got a password that had always worked and all of a sudden it's not, you need to be thinking about that. That's probably somebody that changed it or they're in your account. One more slide of warning signs. Unfamiliar accounts on your credit report. Everyone's entitled to one free credit report per year. I think they have made it easier than it used to be. It used to be a paper form that was like 3 pages long. I think it's a lot simpler now. I've had some feedback from clients that shared as much. So I encourage you to do that. Medical bills for services you didn't receive, health records for conditions you don't have, multiple tax returns or inaccurate tax records. Every year around tax time, fraud goes up. Possibly notifications about a data breach. I don't know if you guys will remember that Westinghouse a couple years ago, maybe 10 now, had that big data breach. That was a big deal. Okay, so 3 pages of stuff telling you this is what to look for. These are red flags. And now we're going to talk about a couple of pages to minimize that. I think the number one thing I'd say before I go over that is just believe that it does happen. I think so often people think it won't happen to me. It's not that frequent. People aren't bad. I mean, I hate to be naive and say that, but I tend to still be a trusting person. First thing I do when we go anywhere is I take my purse and I tuck it away in the stroller, because I have 3 kids and 2 are really little. Well, I don't always have that stroller, right, attached to me. I park it and then I go do something. Like, I should not be doing that, right? So just think thoughtful and mindful of decision making like that. So guard your personal information. Don't respond to unsolicited requests. You get a phone call about something, just be alert. Is what they're telling you perfectly accurate? Is there a unique way for you to identify this person? Truthfully, if you get a phone call and you type the phone number that is coming into your line into Google, 9 out of 10 it's going to say this is a scam. You'll see it right away. So just little things like that, like, you know what, just give me a moment, I'd like to identify your phone number within Google or something like that. Call them back on a public line. So let's say you bank at Huntington and this person saying, this is Kate, I'm calling from your local branch in Pittsburgh, Huntington Bank. And you're thinking, why would they be calling me? Say, okay, great. What branch are you calling from? I'd love to call you back, and call the publicly listed phone number. Just another little tip, little trick. Protect your mail. Don't get casual with paper mail. Sign up for direct deposit if you can. Paper checks, right, create risk. Clean up your financial trash. If you don't have a shredder, of course, we recommend that. And again, burning things. I mean, Allegheny County, that's kind of hard. But if you're a Westmoreland County gal or guy, then you have that option. Review your financial accounts regularly and carefully. So, I pretty much swipe my credit card for everything because I like to earn points. But that doesn't mean I can just pay the bill and move on. I need to be looking at that account. And if I don't know about it, and I check with my husband to say, hey, was this you? Beware of identity theft on the internet. Pop-ups. And anything that's saying, just put your name or email here, it's just going to continue to create a problem for you. Even if it sounds like, oh, that could be great, or I could win this. You're not winning anything. Don't proactively put anything anywhere unless you personally were seeking that site. Protect your devices. Very close with our cybersecurity leader right out of Pittsburgh. And the number one thing he tells me to do is restart my phone at the end of every day. So if you're somebody that you've got your cell phone, most people, that's their main thing, right? At the end of the day, right before you plug it in to charge it, turn it off and turn it on. It's going to shut down any weird things in the background. And that is a great best practice that I do. Just considering my demographic, you know, and I think this is just good information. If you hop on or at all and use TikTok has a lot of, I don't want to say background noise. I'm not personally in cyber, so I don't know what they would label that, but TikTok is a higher risk app with scams and things like that sort of like built in. So Kevin is our cybersecurity, and he just said if I go on it, just make sure as soon as I'm done, turn it off, turn it on, the cell phone. We don't use Google Drive at Huntington either. Google Drive is a storage mechanism, just higher risk. We're not happy with the firewalls built up. Reviewing your credit report. Remember, you get that annual credit report and the resource is right built in. Keep your important documents secure. They make a lot of different websites nowadays for that. And just remember, like the notes inside your phone, if your phone is not password protected, would not be secure. So you want to make sure that you're really layering in the security if you're, keeping passwords or anything on your phone. Beware of disaster-related scams. So that would be national disaster happens and these scammers will make a quick place for you to give money towards the disaster, and you think you're being supportive, but it's actually a scam. Be familiar with the different scams that are out there and read the alerts. And I will share, so one thing that Huntington does when you log into our online banking is we do like a tip of the week. So if you're signing into huntingtonbank.com and to our website, we will do a little pop-up that says, never give your information to anyone. And it'll just give you a little tip around if it's Huntington calling, this is what it's going to sound like. This is the phone number we call from, or we go over that. Huntington will never ask you to provide a PIN code over the phone. So we give a tip out generally every week. All right, so reporting identity theft and getting help. Create an identity theft report. You visit identitytheft.gov for more information. So that's really the place to start when you've gone through that. Your bank can be a pretty good resource, but the thing to remember about your financial institution is they're always on guard for theft. So sometimes people come in and they'll say to me, Kate, will you put a special note on my account because I gave my info out? Well, I can do that, but we're always looking. So while we will put a little note on there, all it's really going to do is solidify what we're already concerned about. Another good one's Credit Karma, because Credit Karma does have pretty accurate reporting. That's a free resource. If your identity has been stolen, work with credit reporting agencies to respond to the theft. You can place a free fraud alert on your credit report initially, or you can do an extended one. Of course, you want to dispute inaccurate information. That is time consuming, but it is very important. If you were a part of our credit reporting and any of our debt workshops before, you know the importance that credit plays. Just to give you an example, when you think about it, getting an interest rate established for a customer, your credit score establishes the risk to the bank as far as will we get paid back this money. The lower the score, the higher the risk. If the risk is higher, the rate is higher. You can be looking at 1 to 5% increase in interest rate on some loan products, which just means that you're paying more money for the money you need. So accurate credit reporting in any circumstance is important, and it's costly to not spend the time to correct a credit bureau error. Costly in the sense of the example I just gave. The bank will be charging you more money because they think you're riskier when you need to have that removed from your credit. The credit bureau also does a free credit freeze that they offer. It can be a pain in the butt because when you apply for a loan, you need to remember that you have a freeze. So if you apply for a loan with the credit freeze, we're going to get an alert that you have no credit at all. And then what happens is you have to remove the freeze for 24 hours. And then we go back in and do it. So just a couple of phone calls is all that's required if you put the freeze on. You would be somebody that, you're at Macy's, they're offering you 30% off if you apply for a credit card now and get approved. Well, if you do a free credit freeze, you really wouldn't have access to that because you'd have to go make a couple of phone calls just to apply. Communicate with your creditors and debt collectors. You just want to be informative, alert them that you've had some fraudulent activity, get copies of documents related to the theft of your identity and store them. Ask them to stop contacting you about fraudulent accounts and get written information about fraudulent accounts. And of course, just remember you have federal rights, especially when it comes to correcting your credit. Identitytheft.gov is a really good resource, and they've done some updates to those type of sites where it's a lot more user-friendly than it used to be, and it's not, there's pictures and things. It used to just be words on paper that think like, oh geez, how grueling could that be? But they've made it a little bit more visually stimulating. You generally have limited liability for fraudulent debts and accounts caused by identity theft, and you can go to usa.gov. So you're probably, most of you, if not all of you, have experienced some level of fraud. If you think about your personal checking account, if you've had debit card fraud or credit card fraud, you probably was as easy as even online saying this is fraud, clicking a few buttons, signing an affidavit, and it getting removed. On the personal side, there's programs out there that make that simple. I just want to give the disclosure because we're really focused on this as a financial institution at Huntington. Should you be a business owner, the rules are different. And so while you have, I'm going to say 90 days on the personal side to determine something was fraud, on the business side, you've got 24 hours. So the government sets those guidelines of how a bank needs to interact with their consumers. And generally speaking, banks just kind of do whatever is set, and that 24-hour rule can cause some frustration for the business owner. Just remember the purpose of that is business customers typically keep higher balances, access to more risk, and we need our business owners as at the bank just being more actively involved in what's going on with their account. All right, so I'll pause for questions. Our key takeaways here is around reducing risk. And hey, if it happens, these are the resources that are out there. All right, so insurance and record keeping. Our key takeaway on this slide is really around, and there's a really great checklist I'm going to provide you with as a resource in the chat, which just kind of goes over all the different types of insurance. And you can mark if you have that type of insurance or if you don't. And of course, the second self-assessment would be, do I really need this kind of insurance? But, it's about keep accurate records of your assets and any damages to your property. It's just about being thoughtful and things like that. So how insurance works reduces the financial impact of a loss or event covered by the insurance policy, helps you protect you from financial catastrophe. My husband actually is in insurance. So I asked him, I said, is any type of identity theft covered in your homeowner's insurance policy or other insurance? He said yes, and it's very circumstantial. So he told me to say that you should just ask around the coverages that you might have through your homeowner owner provider, your insurance provider for homeowners or auto, right? So it just depends on how it happens, whether or not there's coverage. I would have thought that there wasn't coverage, so I thought that was valuable to share because if you have a claim, it'd be great for you to be able to take advantage. Should something come up, can't hurt to ask. So key terms that we're going to be talking about a little bit throughout this part of the presentation: insurance premium, covered loss. So insurance premium is just that bottom line dollar that you're paying for insurance. Covered loss, coverage limit, deductibles, co-payment, co-insurance, that secondary insurance that you could have, exceptions or exclusions, claims, adjudication. I don't know what that one really is. So sorry. Okay, and then there's just different types of insurance, and that's where I'm going to reference this guide to you guys. All of these types of insurance are on here as a checklist for you to think, is there an opportunity for me to be better insured or more insured? Health, long-term care, dental, vision, disability, life, pet, identity theft insurance, vehicle, renters, homeowners, and flood. High level, I want to make sure you guys understand that when you have a carrier, let's call it like Erie Insurance, the more you have with just Erie, you get discounts. Oftentimes, my husband will share with me, I quoted someone on an auto loan today and I offered them renter's insurance because they're obviously someone who rents. It would have been cheaper for them to insure their car if they also had renters because of the discount. And renters is just really inexpensive. And he's, you know, of course, he's like trying to help people out by doing that. But I mention that because that's what these discounts can really provide. The more loyal you are to your insurance company, the better the discount can be. So if you have an auto insurance company and maybe you own an RV, a boat, a home, and it's somewhere else, consider making a phone call to both of those companies and talking about, hey, if I moved one or the other to you, what would my coverage be? And that's not the purpose of the call, but I'm always thinking about ways to save people money. I can't help it. It's in my nature. All right, so getting insurance. Obviously, getting insurance depends on your individual circumstances, what type of insurance you need. You purchase it mostly to manage risk to your assets. You know, the worst thing that could happen to someone's home is that there would be a fire, which would be a full loss, generally speaking, right? You want to be covered for worst case scenario. This really, I just consider insurance paying for peace of mind. You want to consider it for things that could happen and cause serious financial harm. Some insurance, as we know, car, is required by law. Periodically, it's important to review your coverage and make sure that what once made sense for you still does. That's especially true for life insurance policies, depending on what your financial goals are. Shop around. I can't say this enough. I will tell you, my husband's a broker, so he could pick any insurance company for us to be with. We're with Erie. So that just says a lot, right? So that's what the guy picks. So should say something about the coverage that he is looking for our family. Review state-specific information when you do shop around. Every state's a little bit different, has different policies. It's helpful to work with a broker versus a direct agent. State Farm agents, as an example, they only sell State Farm. It's all they know about. It's all they can do. So then that's what they're going to quote you. Just like working with me, generally speaking, I'm going to talk about Huntington because that's what I know. That's what I'm an expert for, and that's who I represent. If I can't help you the way that I wish I could, then I might seek out other banks to help. That's just the same way with insurance. Look for discounts, ask about discounts, look at different quotes, make sure you're getting the best. And consider trade-off between deductibles, co-insurance, coverage limits, and premiums. So you kind of want to take a moment and bring that whole insurance picture together to say, am I covered in the right places? Keeping accurate records, important part of making sure insurance adequately covers your risk. So if you've got some unique items, you might want to photograph those items, get them printed with the date on it, or save them in a file that says, you know, what you have, why you have it. Create and maintain a list of your assets. This is especially true for jewelry. So like wedding rings, things like that, separate line item on insurance. So if you were to lose it in the ocean and whatnot, or one diamond earring, you want to make sure that you have things covered. Document any damages and save any receipts for related expenses, and file claims as soon as possible. Again, these are tips to help you maintain or minimize financial loss, and accurate records really help you do that. All right, so before we kind of go into the next piece, I always have this slide. If you've been here, if you've been with us before, it's all around taking a moment, right? You've got information. It's hard to know where to start. Chuck Spikuza and I'm not sure if he was able to join, but we're both here as resources for you to help. You can, for the topic of insurance, if you have an insurance agent, ask for an insurance review, have the conversation. That's what they're there for. And people in these businesses, they're free resources. You just need to get the right one that wants to help. But think about, what will I do? What are my next steps after some of the things I learned? If nothing else, we know, turn our phone off and on at the end of every day. Smart move, right? How will I go about it? And who will I share my plans with? We always recommend sharing your plan with somebody, because that will hold you more liable and accountable to making the improvements that you want to make from a financial perspective. And this is just a slide to say thank you. That's me, Kate Wentrobel. That's Chuck. Chuck manages our Glassport office, and he typically is on these calls with me and adds some color as well. This is actually the last module that Jen and I have scheduled until we decide whether or not we want to keep going with these and maybe add some new topics or even repeat topics that we've done before, because maybe folks weren't able to join, and we may even consider changing the time to a morning session or something different. So this is normally where I would announce what our next topic is, but we don't have one scheduled yet. But I do appreciate those that have attended all 3 series and made these enjoyable. I hope they've been informative. I will wrap it and we can do questions now, Jen, if you want to end the recording.